the land of three worlds. 3 different environments, 3 different climates, 3 different ways of life. Stretching along the western coast of South America, these lands hold 3 completely different worlds at once. The vast desert along the Pacific coast. Then suddenly rising behind it, the Andes Mountains, with some peaks reaching beyond 6,000 meters. And beyond them, the Amazon Basin, the largest tropical rainforest on Earth. Desert, mountains, rainforest, all within the borders of a single country, Peru. 28 of the world's 32 climate types can be found here. Nearly every weather condition on the planet gathered within one geography. Recognized for its mega diversity, Peru stands among Earth's most biologically rich nations. But Peru's richness is not only natural. Thousands of years before the Inca Empire, civilizations such as Caral, Nazca, Moche, and Chimu thrived on these lands. They created mysterious figures across the desert. They built cities. And today, where all of these civilizations once stood, lies Peru. A country both ancient and modern, home to more than 33 million people. Our journey begins along the Pacific coast. The capital on the edge of the Pacific. Lima stands beside the Pacific Ocean, a city built largely on cliffs, with very little rainfall throughout the year. At first glance, it may seem like an unlikely place for a massive city. Yet Lima is home to more than 10 million people. A desert climate, limited freshwater resources, a narrow coastline. So why Lima? The Humboldt Current. This cold ocean current flowing from Antarctica travels along the coast of Peru, carries nutrient-rich waters from the depths to the surface. This abundance supports enormous schools of fish. And those fish became the foundation of Lima's cuisine. Ceviche, papa a la huancaína, and dozens of other local dishes were shaped by the natural conditions of this coastline. That is why Lima became one of South America's leading gastronomic centers. Why Lima? Because on one side, there is the ocean. And on the other, Baroque churches and historic streets. In the district of Miraflores, a coastal promenade known as the Malecón stretches across cliffs nearly 80 meters high. Walking along this path, you can witness these two sides of the city at the same time. Looking down, another answer to the question of why Lima, surfers riding the waves shaped by the cold waters of the Humboldt Current. Looking upward, yet another answer, paragliders using the thermal winds rising from the cliffs above the Pacific. Lima is a different kind of geography, but one worth understanding. where the desert meets the ocean. We travel south of Lima toward a peninsula reaching into the Pacific Ocean. Paracas, desert and ocean. Two great contrasts. At first, it may seem like a transition zone between the two. But here, the desert and the ocean meet directly. A dry, windy land that receives almost no rain exists side by side with one of the most biologically rich marine ecosystems on Earth. The cold waters carried by the Humboldt Current create extraordinary plankton diversity. The plankton attract anchovies, and the anchovies form the first major link in the food chain for countless species. Sea lions, Humboldt penguins, flamingos, and pelicans all live here together along the coast of the peninsula. Looking out from the shoreline, you can see the Ballestas Islands a few kilometers offshore. Bird colonies on these islands became so dense that their waste accumulated in thick layers over centuries. In the 19th century, this material, known as guano, became such a valuable fertilizer source that it even caused international tensions. Paracas is where the dryness of the desert stands beside the abundance of the ocean. The oasis in the middle of the desert. A few kilometers south of the city of Ica, we arrive in the heart of the South Peruvian desert. A small lake, and surrounding it, enormous sand dunes rising more than 100 meters high. Huacachina is a true oasis. An underground water source pushes toward the surface, feeding the lake. Over time, palm trees and carob trees began to grow around it. An unexpected patch of green in the middle of endless dunes. Years ago, the water level of the lake declined as underground water was heavily pumped for agricultural irrigation. Today, artificial methods are used to help preserve the oasis. Huacachina is an oasis with only a small population, where at sunset, the changing colors of the dunes reflect softly across the surface of the lake. The mysterious marks in the desert, the enigmatic Nazca lines, intricate geoglyphs formed by revealing the lighter earth beneath surface rocks. Their purpose remains a profound mystery. In the middle of the desert, enormous figures of spiders, herons, monkeys, and other forms stretch across the landscape. Some extend for kilometers, and all of them were designed to be seen only from above. But how could figures created before Christ survive for more than 2,000 years? The answer lies in the climate of this desert. Rain almost never falls here, and wind is extremely rare. These conditions created extraordinary natural preservation. So what were these figures? Why were they made? The answer is still uncertain. Were they an astronomical calendar? Part of rituals meant to call for water, ceremonial pathways, No one truly knows. Perhaps the people who created them understood all of this and left behind a message for the future. Nazca is a mystery where the questions themselves become part of the meaning. The wildlife sanctuaries of the Pacific. Now, from Paracas, we board small boats and head out into the Pacific. A short time later, we arrive at the Ballestas Islands. The Ballestas Islands are home to some of Peru's largest seabird colonies. Pelicans, cormorants, Humboldt penguins. And among these colonies, enormous sea lions resting along the rocky shores of the islands. The waters surrounding these islands are among the most biologically productive marine regions on Earth. The nutrients carried upward from the depths by the Humboldt Current attract millions of fish, and those fish sustain all life around the islands. As the boats move along the coastline, another detail stands out. Thick layers of guano accumulated across the rocky surfaces over centuries. We return to the coast and begin heading toward the mountains. The white volcanic city. Traveling inland from southern Lima, the landscape changes dramatically. The pale tones of the desert coastline give way to a volcanic plateau. And in the middle of this plateau lies a city built between three volcanoes, Arequipa. They call it Ciudad Blanca, the White City. But where does this name come from? The historic center of the city was built using a light-colored volcanic stone called sillar. Formed from volcanic deposits in the surrounding region, this stone is lightweight, easy to carve, and naturally resistant to the intense heat of the sun. In the 16th century, Spanish architects recognized the value of this volcanic stone and used it to construct churches, monasteries, and grand buildings across the city. Sunlight reflects brightly from the white surfaces. Arequipa stands at an altitude of approximately 2,350 meters above sea level. Behind the city rises the El Misti volcano. Its snow-covered summit can be seen from nearly every part of Arequipa. The Chili River flows through the middle of this volcanic plateau, bringing life to the valley below. Arequipa also opens toward one of Peru's most dramatic landscapes to the southeast, Colca Canyon. The flight of the condors. Along the slopes of Colca Canyon, layered terraces extend across the mountain sides. More than 1,000 years ago, the Colagua and Cabana peoples shaped these agricultural terraces by hand. Even today, many are still cultivated using traditional methods. As you descend farther, the true scale of the canyon slowly reveals itself. In some places, the depth exceeds 3,400 meters, nearly twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. Far below, the Colca River has carved its way through this passage for thousands of years. From above, you can barely even see it. Thermal air currents rise upward from the canyon floor. And gliding through these currents is one of the Andes' most iconic birds, the Andean condor. Using the thermals, it draws wide circles through the sky. Its wingspan stretches beyond 3 meters. It almost never flaps its wings. It simply opens them and glides. The viewpoint known as Cruz del Condor stands beside one of the narrowest and deepest sections of the canyon. If you arrive early in the morning, you can watch the condors soaring only a few meters away. The Rainbow Mountain. Vinicunca, the Rainbow Mountain, a hidden marvel unveiled as ancient glaciers recede. But as temperatures rose and the ice began to melt, colorful layers of rock emerged beneath the snow. Vinicunca. Some call it the Rainbow Mountain, rising more than 5,200 meters above sea level. It lies in the southeastern region of Cusco. Red, yellow, green, lavender, white. Each color comes from a different mineral. Red from iron oxide, green from chlorite, yellow from sulfur compounds. Over millions of years, these mineral layers were compressed together beneath the Earth's surface. Then, through the tectonic uplift of the Andes, they slowly emerged into the open air. Reaching this place is not easy. Starting from Pampa, you follow a steep mountain trail for nearly 2 hours. The oxygen level drops. Every step becomes heavier. But once you cross the ridge, the landscape suddenly opens before you. You feel the wind, the altitude, and the vastness of the Andes all at once. As the glaciers in the region continue to retreat, the structure of these colorful bands is also gradually changing. The color of glacial water. West of the Cusco region, after climbing steep mountain trails from Pampa for nearly 2 hours, we arrive at Humantay Lake. At an altitude of 4,200 meters, it lies directly beneath the snow-covered peak of Mount Humantay. But the color of the water is unlike that of an ordinary lake. A strange milky turquoise, almost white in certain light. The reason is something known as glacial flour. As glaciers grind against rock, they crush it into extremely fine particles. These particles remain suspended in the water, scattering light at specific wavelengths and creating the lake's distinctive color. The Humantay Glacier is shrinking. Every year, it loses significant surface area. But for now, that extraordinary color still remains. The jewel of the Cordillera Blanca, Laguna 69. Here, lakes are often identified by numbers, and this one became number 69. It rests at 4,600 meters above sea level, in the heart of the highest tropical mountain range on Earth. Around it lie moraines, enormous ridges of rock and debris left behind by ancient glaciers. Behind the lake rises the glacier of Mount Chakraraju. Meltwater flowing from this ice carries dissolved minerals into the basin below, creating an astonishing turquoise color. Here, there is almost nothing except rock, ice, and the sound of the wind. The fortress of tropical glaciers. Huascarán National Park stretches across Peru's northern Andes along the Cordillera Blanca. Home to one of the planet's largest tropical mountain systems. The park takes its name from Huascarán Peak, rising 6,768 meters above sea level, the highest point in Peru. Within the park are hundreds of glaciers. Over thousands of years, these glaciers carved valleys, polished granite walls, and filled natural basins, creating intensely colored lagoons. Meltwater flowing from these glaciers feeds countless rivers, and those rivers provide drinking water to millions of people, both along the Pacific coast and deep into the Amazon basin. The Santa Cruz Trek, Laguna Perón, Laguna 69. All of these routes begin within Huascarán, and each reveals a completely different landscape. The gateway to the mountains. At 3,050 meters above sea level, between two mountain ranges, lies the city of Huaraz. This is where the Cordillera Blanca begins. From here, travelers continue toward Huascarán National Park, Laguna 69, and the Santa Cruz Trek. Huaraz serves as the natural gateway to all of these routes. The city itself feels modest and simple, while the mountains surrounding it are immense and unforgiving. Glaciers, canyons, bands of color. This is what the Andes look like. Now, our journey continues toward Cusco, the heart of an empire. Cusco is a city built high in the Andes at an altitude of 3,400 meters above sea level. Once, it stood at the center of one of the greatest empires ever known, the Inca Empire. Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun. During the Inca period, its walls were said to shine with gold. Today, the structure houses the Santo Domingo Monastery. Yet within the monastery walls, the stonework of the Inca still survives. Precise corners, perfectly fitted blocks, and massive surfaces that remain unbroken after centuries. Cusco is a city that still carries the legacy of the Inca Empire. The city above the clouds, between two Andean peaks at an altitude of 2,430 meters, a city emerges from the mist, Machu Picchu. Built by the Inca in the 15th century, this settlement is extraordinary in both urban planning and architecture. Massive granite blocks interlock perfectly with one another. No mortar, no binding material. This construction method is known as polygonal masonry. For centuries, these walls have withstood earthquakes, rain, and the harsh conditions of the Andes, proving the strength of their design. Beneath the settlement lies a sophisticated drainage system. Rainwater falling across the site is redirected through channels beneath the ground. An infrastructure designed centuries ago still functions today. The terraces carved into the mountainsides were not created only for agriculture. They were also engineered to stabilize the slopes and reduce the risk of landslides. If you arrive at Machu Picchu early in the morning, before the mist fully lifts from the peaks, you witness a completely different side of the city. The structures appear and disappear within the clouds, as if the stone walls themselves are drifting through the mountains. North of Cusco, the Urubamba River opens a wide valley through the Andes, the Sacred Valley. Following the river, you see cultivated fields spreading across fertile plains. Along the edges of mountain terraces, Andean sheep graze quietly. And in the distance, small villages cling to the slopes of the mountains. Life has continued in this valley for centuries. The Quechua language still lives here as well. Today, nearly 4 million people continue to speak it, and it remains an official language of Peru. The Inca Empire may be gone, but its language still survives. The road crossing the valley leads in one direction toward Ollantaytambo, and in the other toward Písac. Each holds a different story. First, we travel to Ollantaytambo. We will visit Písac afterward. The town where time stands still. At the western end of the Sacred Valley lies a small town, Ollantaytambo. Its streets, water channels, and building foundations remain almost exactly as they were designed 600 years ago during the Inca period. Here, people live quite literally inside history. Above the town, terraces rise over the valley. These terraces served both agricultural and defensive purposes. And above them stand enormous pink porphyry blocks. These stones were transported from a quarry on the opposite side of the valley. Exactly how this was done is still not fully understood. Ollantaytambo is quiet, simple, and modest. Walking through its streets feels like taking a brief journey into the past. The Inca Agricultural Laboratory. We continue toward the northern side of the Sacred Valley, to a high plateau more than 3,500 meters above sea level. Here, carved into the mountainside, we find the terraces of Moray. Each terrace has its own microclimate. The temperature difference between the highest and lowest levels can reach up to 15 degrees. The Inca used this difference to test plants from different altitudes in the same place. They observed which species could adapt to new conditions and which performed better in terms of yield. In a way, this was a giant open-air laboratory. From the outside, the terraces appear simple. But behind them lies remarkable intelligence. The Inca used the terrain and altitude to simulate different climates within a single space. Understanding nature deeply while working inside nature itself. Today, when you visit Moray, you can walk down into the terraces. As you move between the levels, you may notice subtle changes in temperature and humidity with every step. And once again, you begin to rethink the Inca civilization. The white pools. We are now on one of the slopes of the Sacred Valley. As far as the eye can see, thousands of bright white pools cover the mountainside, the Maras salt mines. More than 3,000 pools have been built in stepped layers along the slope. But why here? From an underground spring, salty water emerges through the rock. This water is guided through a canal system into shallow pools. The sun evaporates the water, and salt is left behind. The system is that simple. There are no pumps, no machines, and no industrial facilities to force evaporation. Only gravity, sunlight, and a network of channels. At Salineras de Maras, each family has its own salt pools. Each family is responsible for maintaining and harvesting from them. This system has continued for centuries with very little change. When you walk through the area and the sun reaches its highest point, the surfaces of the pools begin to shine intensely. Salt crystals scatter the light. The brilliant white surfaces create an extraordinary landscape. And when you hear the salt crystals breaking beneath your steps, surrounded by all that whiteness, you realize that sometimes photographs are not enough. The guardian fortress of the valley. We said we would return to it later. Písac stands at the eastern end of the Sacred Valley. An Inca fortress built along a mountain ridge above the Urubamba River. Its location was chosen for defense. From the ridge, the entire valley can be observed. The routes leading toward Cusco could be controlled from here. The terraces on these slopes were also used as agricultural land, where different crops were cultivated. In the upper section, there are temples and astronomical observation points. Calculations made from these observatories help determine the calendars for planting and harvest. The Inca looked to the stars to know when the soil was ready for seed. On the opposite slope, thousands of tombs were carved into the rock. This is one of the largest known Inca cemeteries. Písac, with its fortress, terraces, temples, astronomical spaces, and tombs, shows us how ancient civilizations thought about life, land, sky, and death together. If you are feeling this journey, don't forget to subscribe. Now we travel to the place this civilization saw as the beginning of the world, where the sun was born, Lake Titicaca. For the Inca, this lake carried a deeply sacred meaning. For Andean civilizations, it was holy. According to Inca tradition, the sun was born from the depths of this lake. It was seen as the starting point of creation. This belief shaped the entire cultural world around the lake, and temples were built along its shores. Set on the Andean Plateau, on the border between Peru and Bolivia, Lake Titicaca lies at an altitude of 3,812 meters above sea level. Up here, the blue of the sky feels different. It seems so close that you could almost touch it. The sun feels nearer. The lake is vast. It is difficult to see the opposite shore. Standing by the water and looking across it, you may feel as if you are standing beside an ocean. At sunset, the surface of the lake turns the color of molten copper. Journeys here may be short, but they stay in the memory for a long time. The city on the shore of the lake, Puno, lies on the western shore of Lake Titicaca, with a population of around 150,000. It is a modest city, yet rich in cultural value. Aymara and Quechua cultures have lived side by side here for centuries. This coexistence can be seen in its markets and in its traditional textile craftsmanship. Every year in February, Puno begins preparing for a major celebration, the Fiesta de la Candelaria. It is considered one of the largest and most impressive religious festivals in South America. For nearly a month, dances, music, rhythms, costumes, and a vibrant world of color fill the city. When you look out over the lake from Puno, you encounter one of its most fascinating sights, the floating islands of the Uros people. sustainable. Along the shores of the lake, strong reeds known as totora grow in abundance. The Euros harvest these reeds, dry them, and weave them layer by layer to create floating platforms. On top of these platforms, they build homes, schools, and watchtowers. Yes, everything stands on water. As the lower layers of the platform remain in contact with the lake, they slowly decay. That is why fresh layers must constantly be added. The islands are always being renewed. In a way, they are constantly being reborn. The city surrounded by water. Iquitos lies deep within the tropical forest, between the Amazon River and its tributaries. It is one of the largest cities in the world, with no road access. Here, the streets are rivers. Everything arrives and leaves by water. Goods, people, news. For Iquitos, the Amazon and its tributaries have always been both road and marketplace. In the historic center of Iquitos stands an iron house from the early 20th century, the Maison de Fer. Along the riverbank, the district of Belén is built entirely on stilts. As the water level changes with the seasons, the streets change with it. Iquitos is one of the most important gateways for exploring the Peruvian Amazon. Floating markets, river journeys, remote communities, they all begin here. All layers of life. From the peaks of the Andes, you descend into the Amazon lowlands, from 4,000 meters to 300 meters. And this dramatic change in altitude happens in less than 100 kilometers. This is Manu National Park. Each altitude layer has its own microclimate. Different temperatures, different levels of humidity, different vegetation. As you pass from one climate zone to another, everything around you changes. The tree species, the ground beneath your feet, the sounds, the light. The biodiversity here is extraordinary. More than 1,000 bird species, more than 200 mammal species. Very few places on Earth contain such richness of life. The park's core zone, reserved for authorized researchers, safeguards indigenous communities who've chosen isolation, a choice Manu deeply respects. The rest of the park has been carefully opened to ecotourism. The untouched forest. In the southeastern Peruvian Amazon lies an immense forest area. The Tambopata National Reserve. Along the riverbanks are clay walls known as colpas. Every morning, flocks of parrots gather here. The wild seeds they eat contain toxic compounds. The clay from the riverbank helps neutralize these toxins. Whether by instinct or knowledge, the parrots return to these walls at the same time each morning. One of nature's remarkable cycles. Parrots, wild seeds, clay walls, and neutralization. Tambopata National Reserve is home to more than 600 bird species, over 1,200 butterfly species, and more than 200 mammal species. An extraordinary diversity. At some eco-tourism lodges here, the forest can be observed carefully, but not fully entered in depth. At night in Tambopata, you can listen to the wind, the water, and the insects, while watching the Milky Way unfold above you like a documentary in the sky. Tambopata is an untouched forest, perhaps one of the most accurate ways to describe it. At the beginning of this journey, we said Peru was made of 3 worlds: desert, mountains, and rainforest. Now, we understand it better. An oasis in the middle of the desert. Ancient groundwater rising to the surface. Colors revealed by a melting glacier. Floating islands, agricultural terraces, salt pools, and granite blocks locked together without mortar, all carrying the traces and legacy of past civilizations. The Amazon, that magnificent forest, the lungs of our planet, a center of biodiversity, and home to people who have not yet made contact with the outside world. We have still not seen everything. Peru, a land of untold stories, beckons with its captivating mysteries. The chosen isolation of the people living in the core zone of Manu continues to be protected. The mystery of the Nazca lines has still not been fully solved. How the enormous stones of Ollantaytambo were moved remains not entirely explained. We still do not know everything. Peru is a country that cannot be exhausted by what we do not yet understand. Today you may have watched a travel documentary, but the next step may be breathing at those altitudes, trembling in that cold, and standing still inside that silence. If this journey made you curious about a place, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. In every video, we take a cinematic journey to a different corner of our planet. Peru was waiting for us, and the next destination is waiting too.